Good morning, good afternoon, wherever this may find you. I am Cutsy, and welcome to my channel. If you could please hit the like and subscribe button on your way in, I would greatly appreciate that. That being said, let's get to it. We have day 6 and day 7 to go over real quick in the Michigan versus Linda Stermer trial. It's been being called the beaten and burned murder trial. So we left off in the last video on day 5, and almost the entire afternoon was taken up by them proving the qualifications of a retired firefighter, fire inspector, arson squad, but not an investigator, but he is an investigator expert for the defense. It was a lot. And he testified from, let's see what, today's Thursday. So Tuesday afternoon, he testified after lunch, all the way up till close of court on Tuesday. Then first thing Wednesday morning, all day, through breaks, through lunch, up until about the last, I'm going to say maybe 45 minutes of court. And then they had 2 more witnesses on. Was it 2 more witnesses on? No, I can't even remember. I'm so stressed over all of this, listening to him. But basically the judge said, listen, this guy's been up here for 2 days. Unless you have some huge groundbreaking questions, let's ask them real quick and let's tie this up, because it was getting to be a lot. And I'll tell you, I don't really think that he helped the defense like they believed that he was going to. Now, I had said that already that I had watched the Crime Scene Confidential episode. It's season 2, episode 4, and you can pay for it on YouTube. You can watch it on Discovery Plus. If you have cable, you can probably watch it on Discovery On Demand. I wish they'd come back with another season, because it was a really good show. Anyway, one of the things that he stated was that if they stepped into an investigation, if something was possibly arson, they would go in and they would investigate, he and his team. And if it turned out that it was obviously arson, then it would be turned over to the arson squad, because it was purposely set. So, and he is origin of cause certified. So just like we had previously that investigator Leroy that originally went through and did all of this. Basically, they brought him out not to prove that Linda didn't do this, which that was the impression that I got from what he said on the documentary, which we're learning so much about the documentaries we read lately, aren't we? We watch lately, aren't we? And not in a good way, but, yeah, anyway, so it sounded like he was, from what Linda had said in the documentary, this guy was just going to be her savior. That he said, I've got you. I know this. This is no big deal. We got this. I'll help you. Now, what he did do was put doubt in everyone's mind if the information that we've gotten from investigator Leroy was adequate, is one of the words that he used, and if we could trust his findings. He was really, the judge even asked him, now he was very long-winded, and so I don't know how well that was going to play on the jury. I mean, this jury's been there for now, this is the 2nd week, and I mean, I'll admit it. During this guy's testimony, I fell asleep 3 or 4 times, and I bit my tongue twice. Okay, on accident, because I was just like, duh. I mean, wow. It was bad. It was bad. And like I said, the judge even said, if you could shorten up your answers and kind of hone them into the question that's asked, because he was going off on all these side roads. And I get it. I do that. I'm that type of person too. But people quit listening after a while, and I'm not testifying to try and get somebody out of life in prison. So, but he just basically, like I said, for almost an entire half a day and part of the morning went through what his credentials are. Now, he said that he was previously involved in this case, and he was asked in 2019 to analyze the prior investigation by Mr. Leroy. And I believe that's probably when appeals probably started. Or at least this process of appeals, when they thought they were going to get a hearing. But all he had to go by were notes from Mr. Leroy and Jim Shemsky, the other state fire investigator. And also Len McHugh, the adjusters that his investigation notes from the insurance company when he went out and did this. And he said upon reviewing Leroy's notes, he claimed that he had info that was completely irrelevant. But I remember from the testimony, Leroy had said that there were things that he took pictures of just to have notes and just to remember these things at that moment, because they were still putting out the fire when he got there. The house was still on fire the night that he got there on the 7th. And so he took pictures of the van. He took pictures of some of the things outside the house. And were they relevant? Were they not? He didn't know at that time. But I think from the impression that I got from him, it was kind of one of those, better get more information that you need and be able to kick those things out than to not have enough or wish that you had gotten something else when you were there. But he said that Leroy had documented very little on what he had actually excavated from the scene. And that Leroy had stated that the point of origin was in the living room, but the living room contents and evidence had all fallen into the basement. He said that his claims of doing a complete excavation and investigation of the living room was not true, according to the pics and the evidence that he saw. This is Trinkle. Now that's all he said. Then we go to today. Would have been yesterday. I'm a day off. See, this has fried me. And so what he claimed was, his first claim of the day yesterday was that Leroy did not do what he said he did. That he moved some things around but didn't actually excavate the scene to get all the relevant evidence. Photos showed lots of debris left behind, and that they actually used an excavator to remove debris during the other investigators' visits. That's how they got all the piles and the sections around the house that were of the different areas of the debris. Like, they have one that's the chimney. They have one that was some of the contents of the bedroom, like bed frame, things like that. So, I mean, from my completely unexpert opinion, I saw that this Leroy had done that when they showed the pictures originally. And he states that this Trinkle states that the area under speculation to be the point of origin, which Leroy has claimed that he believes that the living room was the point of origin of the fire, but that claiming that the living room is his point of origin is too large of an area to be able to deem that this fire was arson, was set, because you have to narrow it down, apparently, according to him, and what his knowledge of the theories and practices of, what did they call it? NFP, National Fire Prevention Protocol. That Leroy had chosen a section that was 20 by 20, the living room. That's too large to identify. And he believed, and what he said is he was there to testify. What he would have chosen was that the cause of the fire was undetermined. He did not adequately ID other areas. Which, again, from what I remember, he did identify, now we're talking about Leroy again, that he did identify other areas. As he went through his testimony, he did the areas that he believed it wasn't at first. And that was why, because of minimal damage. Or less damage, because the entire house was entire loss. But he did. Trinkle shows from body cam footage when they're pulling up, though, that the fire is in the back of the house. And he sees flames coming from the roof. And he said that this, in his opinion, points to a chimney chase fire. Could chimney chase be the cause? Could it blow fire out of the front of the fireplace at someone? Now, to explain what the chimney chase is it's just basically a lining. In old chimneys, it was like another column of bricks that went around the flue or the piping that went up to the top, out the roof to vent the fireplace, to keep it from touching any flammable materials like drywall or insulation or anything like that. Now, the chimney chase is basically, it looks to me it looked like a furnace duct. It was steel, vent that went all the way from where the flue comes out of the fireplace all the way up to the ceiling, up to the roof, up through and out. But this Trinkle, he's all over the place, and he has trouble kind of hearing sometimes what's being asked or understanding, and this is when this is a defense witness, and one of the times he had been asked something so you believe that basically that Leroy's inspection of something was thorough, and he said so do you believe that what he did was thorough, is what the defense asked, and he said yes. And defense said, now wait a minute, and re-asked his question again. He said, oh, no. So, does he misunderstand? Is he kind of tailoring his answers to fit what the defense wants him to say? And again, he's basing all of his opinions on pictures and these other people's supposedly inadequate reports. And that's the thing, they only went over Leroy's. They didn't go after, from the other state police. They didn't go after Shemsky's investigation. And so I thought that was odd, too, because Shemsky and Leroy seemed to agree on many points. And what this Trinkle had said is that the chimney chase fires would go up around the flue vents. And that it would come out of the flue vents, and basically the entire chimney would be on fire. And he stated in open court that they found a gap in the chimney of the flue piping. So prosecution immediately objects that he's never laid hands or put these together. There's no way to know. After these were excavated, these pipes were smashed and mushed, and an entire 3 floors of a house fell in on these things. There's no way you could have told, unless you actually put them together, that you could tell if there was a gap in these or not. So, it just was odd to me. I'm telling you, I feel bad for this jury. I really do. After 3 naps and 2 tongue bitings, it finally came out that the 3 factors he was using, and the 3 factors that is just protocol, national protocol, to find the cause, of the fire, which you have to find first, to be able to find point of origin is the ignition source, the type of fuel, and what brought these two things together. You must know the answers to all three to be able to make a reliable decision on what the cause was. That the fuel ID alone cannot describe how a fire started. And Leroy had said, according to Trinkle, that he could not connect 1 and 3. But this is the thing. Do any of you have gasoline in your living room? Because I don't. Now, either I'm a weirdo, or I would say that if my house burned down and they found gas in my living room, whether it was a 10 by 10 room or a 20 by room, that would maybe point to the fact that somebody had lit my living room on fire, which I believe is called arson. But, I mean, I don't know. But I digress. He goes on to say that Linda was consistent in her story, that Linda had been consistent in her story that she was downstairs and Todd was upstairs. He says she couldn't have started the fire because she was not in the room when he caught on fire. So, of course, prosecution, objection, you can't prove that. You don't know. You weren't there. That's just what she said. So, again, then defense hops up again for rebuttal and says he again misspeaks to defense's questions. The question was, what if Linda was upstairs with Todd? Does your evidence support that? And he answered, yes, he had evidence to support that. Defense corrected him again that Linda was downstairs. And he said, yes, she was downstairs. So, wow. Okay, I mean, even this guy's wearing himself out. He talked about fuel and ventilation as factors as far as, this house is full of OSB board. It's not finished, that there weren't many rooms in it that were finished. And that the ceiling in the great room or the living room was finished, but these were high vaulted ceilings in there that went up to this loft. And so then he has to show these videos that he made. And they're just really kind of ridiculous. One was made for a completely other fire back in the 90s that was supposed to show how fast and how fire catches other things on fire. And it was just really kind of silly to me. The timestamps were off. They were trying to figure out how much time it took. Each camera was 1 minute off from each other. And so you really couldn't tell how long it took for this fire to start, yada, yada. And the next one was of sweatpants that he went and bought 2 pairs of sweatpants that were 100% polyester. That was the only thing that was exactly that was the same as the sweatpants that Todd had on. But they weren't the same type, they weren't the same style, and what we find out later is polyester has lots of different chemical makeups depending on the manufacturer. So it would burn differently depending on which style, which manufacturer you had bought the pants from, etc. So these videos really didn't show anything. One thing that I thought was interesting is he showed that he threw gasoline on these pants and then threw a match at them and they instantly went up. And how he explained how they caught on fire was that the area that the gas was actually spilled on the pants was not the area that caught on fire because it was still wet. That the area that caught on fire was around that, because the fumes are what caught on fire, and then they put everything else. The fumes were burning, and that's what burned the rest of the pants. But it showed that the area where the gasoline was actually the last place to burn. And I thought that interesting, because if you remember, when they found Todd, his sweatpants and underwear were down around his ankles. Like he'd been trying to get them off. But he was burned from the waist up. Thermal burns. So I thought that was a little interesting. Again, like I said, defense keeps having to steer him back around to where he needs to be. Grandpa's wandering around. Then he starts going off on a side note on critical stress. And that firefighters are trained in critical stress. such as tunnel vision, loss of fine motor skills during stressful situations, etc., and that a middle-aged woman is not. Objection immediately from prosecution that he's not a theory or an expert. He's not an expert in critical stress theory. He does state that the ground and the boat should have been tested for fuel that could have been transferred. But again, prosecution comes back up and makes it a point that this boat didn't have a gas engine in it. It was just a floating plastic duck boat. There was not, so it would have been odd for gas to be in it anyway. And he believes that the clothes that Matheny had placed on Todd could have transferred that gasoline. Again, he gets confused when he was asked if Leroy found out if anyone else had smelled gasoline and the expert answers yes, he did do that. Defense asks again, do you not remember that he didn't ask the first 4 people on scene? Oh, yes, I remember that. But Leroy had stated that it didn't matter what they said because he smelled the gasoline himself. They're trying to prove basically that Leroy was biased and had failed to look at anything other than they tried to that as soon as he smelled gas, that was it. He wasn't going to look any further. Now, Leroy had testified that the gas can be burned up at the scene and become untraceable. The expert said again, though, it's possible, but unlikely, because Leroy didn't actually excavate the scene to prove there was or wasn't. He didn't look, so he can't claim that. He again states that undetermined is the only conclusion that anyone could come to based on the evidence that was actually found. He next goes on to the gas can that was seen, the 1-gallon gas can out in the yard, and shows that there's fire hoses around it, and that inferring that they didn't allow him to say it, but inferring that the hoses kind of moved the gas can around, so we can't guarantee that that's where it originally was. And he went back to Ernst's testimony, who originally analyzed the gas can, showing there was no liquid in the gas can but vapor, and that it was old gas. He could not link the gas can to this fire. And just claims that Leroy, again, did not comply with the protocol of fire causation and origin investigation rules. He has no confidence in Leroy's findings, and his lack of documentation made it impossible to come to any other conclusion than undetermined. This is the thing again. He only saw pictures and read reports. He never even actually talked to Leroy. I mean, and then one of the jurors brought up a really, really good question about the fire prevention manuals that were used. And talking about the 2005 version, which would be what Leroy used, and the 2024 version, which is what Trinkle used. He stated that he used the 2024 version. And based on that, and his own knowledge, that Leroy was not thorough and did not tell the truth to the jury. I think that's pretty bold to say that someone basically lied to the jury. But this is my issue, is that were the things in the 2024 version of their protocols to follow when doing this type of investigation, were they actual theories? Well, maybe not theories, but were they actually practices that would have been in this manual back in 2005 that this witness has stated is now about double the thickness that it was back in the day? So they've obviously added, and he's agreed that they've added more things to it as the years go, as they learn more about better investigation techniques, etc. I don't really understand how you can basically throw shade on someone else's investigation from 18 years ago. It's almost like getting upset that they didn't do DNA back in a 1940s murder case. I mean, just like, come on. If the science or the procedure wasn't there, then how could he have based his investigation on the same protocols that this Trinkle is basing them on? So finally, the judge reminds everybody, this guy's been on the stand for 2 days. Okay, let's wrap it up. So, yeah, they finally did that. And then they bring to the witness stand Zajewski. I don't know if I said his name correct. But he's a professor at North Dakota University, and he specializes in impact biomechanics, basically the forces against the human body. He's speaking on basically he's assessing the severity of the trauma and the speed of the van when it hit Todd. He lists Todd's injuries, said there was zero chance that his head wounds caused the fatality and no indication of brain injury. He said his injuries, other than the thermal injuries, are all consistent with being hit by the van, which we know. States that he was facing forward, so his back was to the van when he was hit. Chances are, because of the dirt in his knees and in his mouth, that he was on his knees. He was not standing upright when he was hit. He claims that the van was probably only going about 3 to 5 miles an hour when this happened. Said that the frying pan theory, when they found the frying pan in the utility room, was not provable. That his head injuries show one event, that something under the van scraped and caused all the skull injuries, which were, they called them fractures, which they were actually just depressions. He said they didn't go all the way through the 3 layers between the scalp, the skull, and the spongy tissue in the inside of the skull. But that he did not match any of the lacerations to the van. Like he looked at pictures of the van, but he did not inspect the van to figure out which parts underneath the undercarriage actually made those marks in Todd's head. So he did not take account any of the other injuries, and basically he's just there to say that Todd had his back to the van, was probably on his knees, and was ran over at between 3 to 5 miles an hour by the van. Now the next witness was Greg Stormsund, who's the assistant district fire investigator for Grand Rapids at that time, and he said he went in with Leroy into the Stermer home on January 8th, and he assisted Leroy. He was asked to do sketches of the house. Said the damage was most severe in the main living room. Said he does not recall an excavation of the home, but he said that that's not because one wasn't done. Said the memory of that day is fuzzy. It's over 20 years old, and that they do that very often. So he didn't really prove anything other than he just didn't remember. And again, like we said with Jim Sturmsky, he had pictures of, you could see things being excavated from the house. So I don't really understand what defense is doing with these witnesses, but okay. Now here we are, day 7, and we are almost done. We've got first witness up is Christine Benny. She knew Linda through Kate Fox. She had gone over there with that Karen Ilch, to take horses that were displaced by the fire. And they again did the same thing. They went into the shed, went into the lean-to, went into the semi-trailer that was used as storage, and saw the pictures out there. There was a little back and forth because apparently Trenton had said something to her, but because it was hearsay, she was not allowed to repeat it. They asked her if Linda had ever asked the boys or Todd to take these pictures out to the shed or the storage trailer, and she said that she did ask, but she was not allowed to say what the answer was because of hearsay. She was also said that Linda asked her to come out on another occasion, and they went through for a couple days and sifted through everything to try and find, again, the wedding rings and baseball cards. And that was basically it. She said that they asked the boys about the pictures, and they never said that Linda asked them to take them out to the shed. That was all that was said about that. Now, last and final witness, Rich McGrew. He's the village manager of Manitowoc. Back then, he was the building official manager, zoning, planning, and inspections of Lawrence. And all he was there to do was talk about, he looked up all the permits and inspections that had been done to the construction of the house, said everything had been done for the rough-ins, which is, it's okay to start construction, you can put in the electric, you can put in the water, you could do this, but for it to be deemed inhabitable, or you have to get one last inspection so that you can get what is called a certificate of occupancy. And anyone that's built a house knows that until you get that, it's technically illegal to try to live in that house. And so they should not even have been living in that house until they had these. And according to him, that they did not have these certificates. They had never gotten the final inspections. And in that case, usually insurance companies will not cover your loss if you have a fire or have anything, water damage because pipes burst, anything. So that's a fact. So if you're building a house, make sure you get that final inspection. If not, you're out of luck. So then after all of that, Linda came up. She didn't come up to testify, but they did a little sidebar. They came back and she stated in front of the court that she was waiving her right to testify. And so that's all she wrote. And now, after lunch, 12:30, it's 12:08 now here, they're going to be doing closing arguments, and we're going to be waiting for some deliberations. I hope these closing arguments are as quick as the opening arguments, because this has really been brutal. I mean, things were flying by pretty fast, but this one witness for 2 days was a little bit much. And like I said, to invest all that time and then in the end have it just be that, well, I can only deem that that the point of origin and cause of the fire was undetermined. Wow. So I guess we'll see. I still don't know. I think there's a lot of sketchy things going on between how it started, the events of that morning, the story changing, the kids' but then again, the kids' memories changing. Were they lying? Were they schooled into thinking and changed their opinion? Were they lying then or are they lying now? I don't know. This is a hard one. And listening to a lot of this testimony just really confused it. But I guess that's what it is with the defense, right? They just have to put that little bit of doubt in, because if the jury has doubt, they can't convict her. So I guess the defense did do their job in that sense. So deliberations start in about 20 minutes, and after that, then we wait and we see what the jury has to say. So everybody have a great day. I will come back when I find out what their decision is and throw up another little thing. And until then, cutsy out.